Cool. Do you drink tea still?
No, no, no. I don't drink tea anymore. I haven't drunk tea now in the last 16, 17 years.
17 years. You haven't drank tea for 17 years.
Yeah,
But not you. But growing up, you always drank tea. That was your
I
thing.
always
Like
drank tea.
people.
Yes, I dropped tea, and I find drinking coffee more stimulating than tea.
Coffee's full of coffee. Coffee's not good for you. Anyway, we're gonna
No,
get this off the road, onto the
that's
road.
that's that that's
Uh,
your opinion.
okay, cool. So for those of you who are just joining, welcome. Carvin Goldstone. Yeah, obviously you know that because you joined in. This is my father. I'm gonna introduce my father to you. Some of you might know him. Some of you might hear me in him when he starts speaking. You're gonna be like, yeah, I can hear that's your father. I want you to feel free to put some comments in the comment section. Allison, I'm gonna put some comments on the screen as you post. So there's Allison Chantal. She says you look like your dad, Carvin. I don't know how I feel about that. I never looked like you growing up though. Like I was
No, no,
always.
no, no.
Who do you think I look like now and as compared to growing up, just out of interest?
I think you look more your face, your mom,
Yeah, I always
more
thought
of
so
your,
too. But
yeah, your
people
more.
seem to think that I look like you, so I'm not sure if that's because of our size or our actual facial features. What I am jealous, very jealous about my father is he has a full beard, and if you look at his beard, see me, I got like a patch. Like I don't know, I had alopecia. For those of you who know what alopecia is, it's like when your hair starts falling out. Do you remember when I had alopecia? I think you
Yes,
were you
yes.
weren't here. I had patches all over. Many people don't know how I ended up on TV. I'll tell you a quick story, Dad. You might remember this, but I was a journalist for the Independent on Saturday, and a friend of mine, Zain Nabi, Zain's mother's actually on this feed. I'm just gonna find her comment here. She says, "I love coffee, Mr. Goldstone." And he was working at ETV, and he needed an analyst to come in to help do analysis for the football analysis for the FIFA World Cup in South Africa. And he said to me, Carvin, can you come? I know you know football, but I hadn't done football. And I basically went in there and I started like literally just off the top of my head doing this analysis. Nobody knows I'm not an analyst. They just, they don't know who you are. And I had a big patch on my head because I had alopecia. And my father's sister, until Annette, she watched it on TV and she called me. And like, sometimes it's your first time on TV. You think they're going to be all excited. And she was like, how can you go on TV with a big bald patch? I said, what was I do? Just put polish or something. You can't be on TV with a big bald patch. So maybe let's just start there. My father's sister, he's got quite a few siblings. I mean, like we don't talk much about your brothers and sisters. Even as a child, I didn't know much about your brothers and sisters. What do you remember?
My my remembrance of them is that they grew up not in a very um, like a conducive environment, but they are very, very, very united and close together. That's my remembrance.
So now, like I always explain to people, and especially to my son, your grandson, Jacob, they try to understand how it was different for me compared to him and compared to you. But you in particular, this Jeanette saying hi, good to see you. You in particular
Hello,
have
hello,
had a
Jeanette.
very like difficult upbringing. Maybe you want to just maybe let's just start the conversation there. You can just maybe take us into some of the parts that you're comfortable talking about as a child and how your life changed quite dramatically when you were very young, and how that also informed how I saw the world and how you fathered.
Look, I grew up in a Catholic school um, with a lot of nuns and priests, um, which I found very, very, very good, well-meaning people who wanted to do the best for us in this Catholic school. Um, there were nuns that were good. And I understand that. And there were nuns that weren't so good. And I also understand that. In that they also came from a place where they had to leave their homes as young girls and go into a place of a nunnery. And it wasn't easy for them. So they also had a hard time. And as boys growing up in Catholic school, we had to understand that. There was a nun there that we all loved very much. She was English, and her nephew played football. He was a goalkeeper. He played for Manchester United, and that was the time that I actually got involved in following Manchester United. Was through this nun. She loved football, and she allowed us to play football, and she gave us shoot magazines and football magazines that she would send. We would go to school. It wasn't easy growing up in a Catholic school, but we survived as boys. We were just boys, and we survived. I still have a relationship with some of the boys today. I'm sure some of you that are watching this program, you must be saying, "Is that Carvin's ballie?"
Some people are saying you're ahead of me, yeah. Bridie says, "Hey, you're ahead of your father. Your father, you have AirPods, and I don't." So,
for those of you, he must remember, I live in a first world country.
For those of you who are just tuning in, my father doesn't live in South Africa. He lives in England. I live here. So usually what happens in most people's cases is that your parents, they tell you, hey, you must go see the world, go live in another country. In my case, it's the opposite way around. I live in this country, and my parents are the ones who actually left many, many years ago. So just back to now, you used to always tell us stories about growing up in the... So when you say growing up in a Catholic school, it's actually a boys' home, and it's in some ways it's an orphanage, right? It's like where boys are kept.
Right, that's correct.
And you were quite young when you ended up in an orphanage. Do you remember those early stages when you arrived there?
No, I was too young then to actually remember or comprehend what was really going on. But me and my younger brother, Christopher, who's still alive today, that's where we grew up, in the Catholic school, boys' home, and we survived.
Okay. There's a message from Tessa Hendricks. Hello, Uncle Lawrence. My dad, Peter Ward, sends his regards. So I'm sure these are people that you know.
Hello, Pete.
Now, Dad, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, especially like from that period growing up, when we grew up, we never really like made a big deal about birthdays, and especially your birthday. It was one of those things we kind of just passed over. Can you tell me why that wasn't like such a big thing for you?
Look, growing up the way I grew up, we didn't know whether it was your birthday or what. We didn't know when it was your birthday. So we never made a fuss about birthdays, about holidays, about what day. The only time we knew it was a holiday was Easter or Christmas Day. That's when the fuss was made. And the nuns didn't really fuss about our birthdays. Why should they? There's 300 of us. Who's going to fuss over my birthday when there's 300 other boys who also have birthdays? Who's going to fuss over mine? So I grew up not really bothered about birthdays. What's a birthday? Growing up with you and Kenan, to me, I was happy just to have you around and to enjoy your birthday, because I couldn't enjoy mine. Now it was my opportunity to enjoy your birthday. That's what it was for me.
Yeah, someone said something quite interesting. So weird. My name is Christopher Lawrence. So he's got your brother's name and your name. No, you can clarify something for me here, but in terms of your age, I have an idea of how old you are, and you have an idea of how old you are. But is the age that we think is your age, is that your actual age?
No.
No.
No. I'm not going to tell you my age. You know what
Don't
my
tell us
age.
your age.
I'm actually 2 years older than my original age.
Okay. Unpack that a bit more.
I growing up, being born in a place called Mtwalume, which is in Ifafa, and my parents then registered me late. When my younger brother was born, I wasn't registered. So they went and they registered us as twins. And we're not twins. And we're not twins. And when I got to the Catholic school, the orphanage, they realized that no, these aren't twins. You know? So I got a birth date, the 18th of December. And he got a birth date, the 1st of August. And so I'm actually 2 years older than him. That's
wow.
the whole thing.
What's his age? And his age is 2 years younger than you at the moment, or you're still the same age?
We regarded as we are recorded as being the same age.
But you're not.
But we're not. We're not.
Yeah. So like, and this is like something that I suppose for people who like myself being a comedian, and then you see themselves out there and they assume it's easy to assume that you come from a line of people who were storytellers, but or that you picked it up later. But in my case, like someone says, yeah, your dad sounds like Morgan Freeman, right? One of the fondest memories.
Who's making jokes here?
It's Kurt Gerard Jacobs is saying you sound like Morgan Freeman. One of the fondest memories I have of you is actually storytelling. And your grandfather, James Steleli, as Auntie Lynette tells me, was a famed storyteller. So she said to me the one day, she came to the Playhouse and watched the show, and she said, like for people who don't, she wishes your father was alive to see this, because their grandfather, his father, told stories. Do you remember anything about him?
Look, my grandfather Steleli, sometimes it was like, what's wrong with these people? Are they crazy? They walk for miles to listen to an old man talk stories. But he was a marvelous storyteller. He could relate an incident to you like it was happening while you were watching it. That's how good he was at storytelling. And people come from miles just to listen to this old man tell stories. And in my family, your Auntie Lynette is a very good storyteller. Her son, Dale, is a very good storyteller. And so it's something that is inbred in us, that we tell stories. And now, yeah, you are. And when I see Jacob growing up, he doesn't talk much, but he's a storyteller. He can hold a good conversation in storytelling. It's part of our makeup, I think. Just part of our makeup that we tell stories.
Now, you when I became a journalist, you said to me, one of the things you said to me was that you wanted to be. It's one of the things that you considered. But like,
I did.
you came out of St Theresa's home, the boys' home, the orphanage. Now, what happens there? Like, you don't have anywhere to go to, so you don't have, like, for example, parents that will take you out. So, from what's the process from that point to school, high school, into life?
Yeah, it depends. Sometimes your aunties or your uncles that know where you are, they get hold of you, they take you, and you go to school, they take care of you. I went and I lived with another family who were okay, they were good. I went to school. I didn't have a problem going to school. I went to school. I went to high school. And that was it. You know, it was okay. It was okay. It was okay. It was okay.
For me, right, you know, especially when you grow up in Newlands East or you grow up in a colored community, especially the way South Africa was segregated, you interacted with colored people from all different areas as more of a common group than the rest of South Africa. And one of the common things was that a lot of colored guys worked in Cecil. Their fathers worked in Cecil or in Secunda. They were welders, boiler makers, pipe fitters. And I didn't have much of that story for you, except there's one picture of you standing in the snow. And I think it's in Cecil. But you, for some reason, you never took the route of being a welder or a boiler maker, although I think you did do it at one stage.
I did. I suppose Cecil was an outlet for a lot of colored people in terms of employment. Then work was scarce, whether you lived in Cape Town or Johannesburg or Durban, wherever. The engineering business. Look, in the early years, boiler making was a job done by white people. You weren't allowed to do it. Welding was a job for white people. It's only later in the 60s, I think, where the job market in that area began to open up and colored people joined the queue of being welders and boiler makers in engineering. And so when Sasol came, it was like a door open for colored people to go and work as engineers and welders, boiler makers, whatever, pipe fitters and instruments.
Were you any good at it?
All these kind of things. Me? Now look. There are people that are very good at what they do, and I applaud them. Me, I get by. You know what I mean? I get by. There are people that are very good at what they do. Me, I'm not going to say I was good at what I do, but I got by. Let me say that.
Okay. There's a question here. Antoinette Pretorius. Please ask your dad if he remembers my dad, Mr. Heslop. He taught at St Theresa School, was very involved with the nuns in the home. Name sound familiar, Mr. Heslop?
He was a very, very good man. And I must say to her, your dad, he taught me in Senate 5 at St. Theresa. He was a very, very good man. And I have nothing bad to say about him. I have a lot of bad things to say about a lot of teachers. But Mr. Heslop, no. I cannot say anything bad about him. And those of you that are listening, and you know Mr. Heslop, you will know what I'm saying is true. You will know that. He was a very, very good man.
There's a message here from Simba. Tell Uncle Lauren Simba is watching. Wonderful to see you too. Simba, Mapufumira? Yeah.
Oh, Simba.
Simba's your friend from London.
Yeah, he lives in London with me. We have interactions together. I enjoy his friendship and the friendship I have with his family very, very much.
Can I tell a quick Simba story? I know he's listening. You might remember this. When I went to visit Mum for the first time in London, Simba took me to church. I don't know, Simba, if you're commenting here, if you remember, you took me to a church service. Anyway, Simba's Zimbabwean, right?
Yeah.
And then Simba invited me to go to church with him on the other side of London, and it was the craziest experience I've ever had in church experience in my life, because we were in London. He said to me, we took trains and buses and whatever, and we got there. We got all the way to the church, and this church in the middle of London was in Zulu. The whole thing was in Zulu. The service was in Zulu. The singing was in Zulu. The preacher was a Pastor Kumbi who preached in Zulu. And it was, as you know, my Zulu is not great. It's not good at all. And there was an English lady at the back, and the two of us sat at the back, the only two people in a church in London who couldn't speak Zulu. And then so I was curious. I asked her, why are you here? And she says, no, I don't understand, but I'm just happy. What about you? And it was a little bit embarrassing because, you know, I'm a South African. Zulus, I'm from KwaZulu-Natal, and I couldn't follow the service in full. You, however, are very fluent in Zulu. Why do you think it is that you picked up Zulu and you ran with it, obviously from where you grew up, and like for some reason, a lot of us don't have this. Oh, this is another Simba. Sorry, wrong Simba.
No,
Anyway,
no,
and just why do you think it is that a lot of us didn't pick up Zulu?
Look, you don't lose the language that you were born into. Now, I was born into a family where we spoke Zulu as children, as little boys. And so the language lives with you. Now, if you're born into an English family, into a family where you only speak English as a baby of a year-old baby, that's the language that is embedded in your psyche. So you grow up speaking that language. So if along the years you move on to India, and in India they speak Hindi, English will always be part of you because that's what you were born into. The first words you spoke were in English. And so that thing lives in your psyche. Now with me, that's what happened. I moved away from there as a little boy, moving into a place where they didn't even know what the word Zulu spelled like. But the psyche of the language lived in me. So as I grew up and the more I interacted with people that spoke the language, it kind of just went on and on and on and on.
It's not. When you arrived at
yes.
When you arrived at the homes, could you speak English at all?
Not really. Like as I'm explaining to you now, it's a language that you were born into, and it lives with you. It lives in your psyche. You grow up with it. You might lose it along the way because you moved into another country, another society where they speak another language, but that thing lives inside of you because that's what you first spoke, and that's what happened with me. And so as I interacted with people who spoke the Zulu language, and it kind of came back, and so that's why I speak the language now.
There's a message here from. Let me go to this one first. This was from Howard. Good man made me work in a taxi on the weekend. Now this is an interesting story because people don't know. Maybe if you're watching and you follow me and you don't know this, my father, my earliest memories of my father working, as I say, was not Cecil, but that he was a taxi driver. He used to drive taxis in Newlands East, and then eventually. That's why this guy Howard is saying that he gave him a job there to work in the taxis because he eventually went on to. The only way up in the taxi business is to get a permit, and those permits, they're like gold. If you can find one, you have to find someone for one. And if you get one, you try to keep one. So it was quite interesting growing up because the taxi industry was a violent and still is a violent business. You were very much a religious person, a Christian person, and you found yourself in the middle of this very violent industry. As a child, I remember you even had a gun. You guys would have to stand at the corners of Newlands East protecting the territory. What was that whole experience like for you, given how your life had changed when you became a Christian and now you found yourself in the middle of this, like a war, essentially?
Look, before I owned taxis in Newlands, I was a Christian. I've been a born-again Christian from 1977. That's the part in a religious part that I wanted to take, and that's the part I took. So when I got involved in the taxi industry, as such, I was already a Christian. So it was a conscious decision, knowing that, look, this is not an easy industry. It's not. But I'm going to get involved in industry. And I did. It was hard, it was difficult. You just have to maintain who you are. And I know who I am. I knew who I was. And so I had to maintain that. This is who I am, and this is how I should act, and this is how I should be. And there were those times when you felt like choking somebody to death. It's part of the industry. You know what I mean? You get angry. No foul language though. No swearing. No. That wasn't part of me. You know, in our home, nobody swore in our home. You know that. Nobody swore in our home. Nobody used filthy language in our home. And so you just have to maintain in that industry who you are. That's what it was.
There's a message here from Mario Beam. Chun Uncle L Beam says, "What kind, ballie?"
What kind, Mario?
So
when you coming back?
Interestingly, when you're coming back, Mario. Interestingly, and this is something a lot of people don't know, is that even though your position in the taxi industry was, as you're putting it forward, you still found yourself in a difficult position because you were shot. You were shot. Was it once or twice? When they yeah. So I was pretty young at the time. I remember like it almost being a myth and a mythical story of that you ran. When you get shot, you ran from this point to that point to get help. Or maybe you want to take me through that process, or what happened and how it unfolded for you as you remember it, and also what that did to you as a human being after being shot.
Look, being shot, when you have two people with guns shooting at you because they want something from you, they want to take it from you, it's not an easy thing. Psychologically, it damages you. But fortunately for me was this. The bullet went into my belly. And if you see me, and you see Carvin's belly, then you know what my belly looked like then. And so the bullet went in and came out. And there was no internal damage inside. After that, even now, I must say this, I don't have any sympathy for hijackers and robbers. People who threaten other people's lives. People who hijack and shoot people. Whatever happens to them, I don't have any sympathy for them. None whatsoever. Now, that comes through what happened to me. That comes through, but at the same time, I have to look over the wall and see what happens to people who it happens to. Some people can't get back to work because they become damaged by what happened. A man comes with a gun into the shop, he holds you up. Where does it leave you? Now, that's what happened to me. But as the years went by, I have mellowed a little bit.
A lot.
Certain things. Yeah, I have calmed down, but my sympathy for those kind of people, what happens to them, no, I've got none. Now, I'm being honest. For those of you that are watching and listening, I've got none.
Quick question here, Carmen Bowers. How did you end up at St. Theresa's home? Do you remember that process and what was going on that you had to get there?
Look, no, I was too young to really understand the real process. But it had to do probably with, my mom died when I was probably 2 years old. Probably 2 years old or 3. My mom died. She was run over by a car in Mzinto, which is part of Mtwalumi, Fafa area. And it was just my dad. And I don't think he could take care of us both because he wasn't an educated man. He lived off the farm, the sugarcane farm. He had to work on the farm. Look, I come from a family, if you do our history, my family is Jewish and they come from England, in a place called Darlington, in England. They were Jews, they came from here, they came to South Africa. And the colonialist government then gave them land in Mtwalumi. 10,000 hectares of land owned by my great-grandfather. There's title deeds, maybe some of you are listening, that I've got there I got from somebody there at home by me, that the land belongs to us. My father's name is on the title deed. My father's name, Fred Goldstone, is on the title deed. But we will never, ever get that land back, because that land is now being given over to the Ngonyama Trust. So there's no way. I have a cousin whose son tried to do a lot of work to get the land back, but there is just no way. And so through that, that's how I ended up there. My mom dying and my dad not really being an uneducated man, couldn't do much. So
there's a few messages there. I'm just gonna.
It's a good question. It's a good question.
There's a few people there. Sheldon, Marilia, greetings. Lawrence, Goldstone, looking good.
Hello, hello, Shella. How are you?
Van and Gaylord, ask your dad if he remembers Anton Twas.
Yes, very much.
Okay, cool. Winnie Norman. Wow, bro, Lawrence, we miss you. We'll share this with Sister Fortune.
The old lady, shame.
Yes, still very much at it. Okay. Yeah, so there's something I'm trying to find this comment. There was a particular comment I wanted to ask you about. It was from, let's see if I can just pull it up here. Oh, yes, here we go. It's from Thomas Lindh. Hello, Varbroor Lawrence. So I'm assuming Varbroor is brother.
Thomas. I was thinking of Thomas the other day. Maybe 3-4 days ago. I was saying to myself, we have to make a plan and go to Sweden. It's just over the road. You know, I was thinking of Thomas the other day. Really, I really was thinking of the other day.
So for those of you who don't know Thomas, I'm just going to give you a quick backstory. Thomas stayed with us. Thomas is from Sweden, and as I was a child, I must have been like what, 8, 7, maybe even younger, 5. And Thomas came to live in Newlands East with us. He was part of a church exchange sort of program. And it was the weirdest experience for me as a child, because we didn't have any interaction with white people on any level. And now there was a white guy staying in our house. And so as a child, it was I think it was a good exposure, because it also, it broke down some of the myths that you have about white people in general, because Thomas was extremely generous. I remember he bought Keenan and I tracksuits, so those memories were like they're quite imprinted, because I was fairly young. I must have been fairly young, and I remember him quite clearly. That you gave my room to him, so he had my room as his room, and that sort of relationship. I mean, I'm talking about 30 years ago, right? That was at least 30 years ago. And Thomas is someone, we're literally talking about someone that we were in contact with for how many months? Maybe a month, 2 months at most?
Yeah.
And kind of that interaction with him lasted 30 years. That's a fascinating thing, that a relationship or someone that you encounter for two months or a month can stay in your life for the rest of your life, even if you don't see them again. All right. Here's another one from Carmen. Carmen is saying, there you go. Thanks for answering my question, Mr. Goldstone. I always wondered how children ended up in the homes. Very sad story, but also very enlightening. Maybe one day your family will get their land back. I don't think you want the land back, really. You be kind of, I got cousins who are like, hey, Carvin, the family got stuff there and we must go to blah, blah, blah. And to be honest, personally, I'm not interested in that fight.
Yeah. Let me tell you a story about Thomas. About Thomas. We were having a conversation. So I tried to teach Thomas Breno slang, colored people slang.
Yeah.
And so I said to Thomas, I just said, hey, I'm going to hit a swears. So
it's a swears. That's your thing.
Yeah. Hit a swears, I want to go and pee, So
yeah.
Thomas, he says, oh, so when you go and pee, you say, I want to hit a swears. I said, yeah, that's how we speak amongst our friends. So we were sitting in a meeting with other ministers of the gospel, whatever it was. We were sitting, and Thomas wanted to use the toilet, and he stood up and he says, I want to hit a swears. I did myself. Hey, you got it, Hey, Thomas. I will never forget you, my brother. Never, ever forget you, Thomas Lindh. Never, ever. As I said, I was thinking of you the other day. You know, thinking about it. Never forget you. Wonderful man. Wonderful man. Wonderful man.
Here's a question from Vernon. I had a lot of friends that say, oh, it's a statement. I had a lot of friends of from St. Teresa's homes. They called us daisies because we were not from the homes. So for those people who don't know the setup at St. Teresa's homes, you had homeboys who were essentially like orphan boys who were living off the home. Everything, their whole life was the home. They ate at the home, they slept. You always tell you as kids, when we used to complain about cleaning up or washing the bath, he's always telling me the story. Hey, when the homes, we used to wash 300 baths or something like that. You know, that's the homeboys get. That was like that was your favorite story to get us to do stuff. Was you know how many pots I had to wash, and you know that's the homeboys get. But the school didn't just have orphan boys or homeboys. It also had like children from the area. Like, just how did that relationship play out?
I'm trying to think how we reacted with them. It was always a mutual relationship between us and them. There were some that tried to be rude and funny because they weren't in the home, but generally, I must say, I have still maintained a good relationship with some of those boys that were not in St. Teresa's. They were just at the school. You know, up until today, I have a good relationship with some of them. But it's always been mutual. The relationship always been mutual. Always.
Now, some of those boys, sometimes I'll meet them and they'll say to me, "Hey, you Manny's is lighty," which is weird, right? Because I suppose not many people refer to me as my father's son. They know me through music or journalism or comedy, and I've always been Carvin Goldstone. But every now and then someone will say to me, "No, you Manny's is lighty. You Manny's is lighty." Which is a weird thing because Manny's is not your name. It's actually a nickname of a nickname. And I could tell it, but you can rather tell me where Manny's came from.
We all have nicknames. People just give you a name. They look at you and they think, oh, you 5 years old, but you look like a man. Manny's, you know, that kind of thing. So,
wait, let me explain. Because
wait, hold it. Your parents give you a name.
Yes.
You go into the community, then they give you a name.
They give another name.
They give you another name. And sometimes this name given by the community is the name that everybody knows. They don't know your real name. Do you remember when we lived in Haddock? There was a youngster that lived, Sam's son. What was his name? Zain.
Zain, yeah. Fatma Khud.
What was his name?
Fatma Khud. Fatma Khud.
No, he had a nickname.
Yeah. Fatma Khud. Fat your Khud and Trek.
Yeah, now, that's how we knew him. One day, the social workers came looking for him. And they were looking for Zain, so they came to our door. So the other, boy called Zain? I said, no. We don't know anybody yet.
We don't know a Zain yet.
No, we don't know anybody called Zain. We later found out, no, this Fatma Khud is Zain. That's what it's like. People don't know your real name, they just know you by a certain name. But that's living in a colored community, suppose, or in any community.
Okay, so Renice Danielle Francis has a question here. Carvin, can we finally hear about the H in your name? So one of the problems, or one of the things that I often have to explain to people is why do I have an H in the middle of my name? Because it can seem a bit pretentious, you know, like, oh, why must you have a letter just sort of hanging out in the middle? And when I tell people, no, Carvin H is my actual name, they can't really get their head around that, you know. They're just like it doesn't make sense. The craziest thing that happened to me is I went to Home Affairs to apply for a passport, and they asked me, what does the H stand for? reading it out of my ID. Because in my ID, it's Carvin with an H. And I said to them, what do you think the H must stand for? Because in the ID, it's an H. If there's any place where it's going to be the full name, it's going to be here. So maybe you want to explain what was going through your heads, what was going on in your head when you were naming me, that you gave me the name with a single letter at the end of Carvin.
Number 8.
Okay.
Number 8. H is the 8th letter in the alphabet. And the number 8 is a number that I liked. So when I counted, so saying 8, I said H. So I left the 8 out. So that's why it's an H, because of the number 8.
I never knew that. That is the first time I've ever heard that. I've never, and you know what's crazy about that? You know what's so bizarre is that I've never known that. That's the first time I've heard that. And when I was naming Jacob, his second name was also a number 7. that is really bizarre. That you thought that, never communicated to me. I had a son, and also went for a number, a representative number. So Dad, just a quick question now. You know, with everything that's happening in South Africa and the world, the pandemic, I think for people that are living in South Africa, they don't really know what's going on in the minds of people, you know, in Europe. Are you guys locked down? What are you doing at the moment?
Look, where I live. I live in the UK, but I live in London. Now, there's this thing, and people say to you, where do you live? And I say to them, I live in London. They say, where's that? I remember the friend, I don't know if he's still alive, he hadn't seen me for a long time. So I'm living now here in London for about 18 years, I think, around there. And when I got back to visit some time ago, he says to me, calls me Goldstone, where you come? We thought you were dead. I said, dead? Yeah, we haven't seen you. Wait. I said, no, I don't live here anymore. I live in London. He says, where? London. I said, yes. Where's London? Johannesburg. I realized, you know what? We have a grave problem in South Africa. A grave problem in South Africa, where somebody can say that London is in Johannesburg. No, there's something wrong somewhere. But the pandemic here in England right now, there are a few cities that are on lockdown. We have the second largest city the third largest city in England, in the UK, that is on lockdown, Birmingham, and there are a few other smaller cities that are on lockdown. So the pandemic is very, really taking its hold once again here in England. Once again, we are on lockdown.
One of the questions, was would you come back to South Africa? You've been there for beginning on like 18 years now. Would you come back?
I would love to come back to South Africa, and I hope to come back to South Africa. I miss the country. I miss what it represents. I don't want to look at the country politically. I have a lot of personal comments about the country politically and in the way they're doing things. But generally, I would love to come back to South Africa. I wouldn't want to die and be buried here. That's my own personal view. Your mother and your sister might have another view. I don't know. But I would love to see you again, not just to see you on the screen. I'd love to give you a hug and give my grandchildren a hug. You understand? To see my brothers, my 2 brothers, and to see my sisters and my nieces. And I would love that. But I'm not a magician. I can't just make things happen. For me to say, hey, tomorrow, right now, there's no planes flying into the airports here from South Africa. So I'm stuck. The pandemic is back. Yeah.
Noeleen Smerdon says number 7 is completion, number 8 is new beginnings. They're both powerful numbers. Numerology. Okay, here's a question. Adila Bucks wants to know what made them move to London. This is an interesting story. I don't know if you should tell it, and then I'll fill in the gaps. But
No, you tell the story. Tell the story.
But I think you tell it, because you obviously you and mom had to have a conversation between you before she leaves.
No.
So, okay.
We were actually thinking of leaving Durban.
I didn't know that.
Up north. No, your mother, no. We had the conversation. There was nothing planned or whatever of leaving Durban to go up north. Probably to do just a change of life. And then there was this opportunity that was advertised in the newspaper that they were looking for teachers in England. And then the conversation was between your mother and I was, should I take a chance? I said, okay, let's look into it and see how we can work our way around it. Then we had you, who was about to go to college or whatever it was. And so the conversation was, okay, look, if it's going to help you, then let's do it.
Yeah, so that's how I remember it.
But thing is this: it's not that we couldn't send you.
Yeah.
From South Africa, it was just assist us more.
Made it easier.
Helping to send you. You can make it. We could have sent you there without your mother coming here. Your mother and I have always worked. You know, we've always worked. We've always kept our home going. We built a house together, not just we built a house. And so the idea of us coming here was, okay, it's going to help. It's going to help.
So now, one of the challenges though of you guys leaving was that you'd never been in a plane or overseas, at least. Which one is it?
I'm living in Newlands East. I'm born in South Africa. Hey, Carvin.
Had you been on a plane before you went to?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course. Yeah. I went to go to Cape Town in the plane. Went to Johannesburg. I went in the plane. You know.
Okay.
But when I was growing up, my generation never. You make a joke of this. Never went for holidays, like outside of your granny's house next door. You know, you went on holiday, you go next door, holiday, and tea time you come in, have tea, but you sleep at your granny's house next door for holiday. You know, and so how many people really get into an airplane? Financially, it's just impossible.
So then going overseas, you took a long time to go, because it took you like maybe 2 or 3 years before you actually made the move.
The reason for that was your mother needed to settle down here, and the few things that I needed to tidy up there, and plus to see you through, you know, to see you through. Because the day you went to get your
to graduate,
you weren't
my first
there.
job.
You were in England. You didn't go to your graduation. You were here.
No, I didn't go to graduation. No,
because you were in England, and there was a few things that I needed to tidy up.
There's a message. There's a message here from Gregory Langley. I don't know if you know Gregory Langley or Carvin. Brilliant, sing your ballie. They all call you ballie. So weird. Yeah. Always had great respect for him from Mayville days.
Yeah.
You lived in Mayville for a bit.
Yes, I did.
How did that work? Like in the timeline of like Mthalumi, St Theresa's boys' home?
Yeah. Kenan. There's a family that I lived with, and they lived in Mayville.
Okay.
There was a little bit of cousins of mine, and I lived with them for a while, and they lived in Mayville.
All right, cool. Okay, we're gonna get towards the end. We'll wrap it up. I don't know if you guys enjoyed it. We can do it again next week if you're really interested. I've got lots of questions to ask my father, and like you, I'm learning things too in this moment. Okay. So just before we go, right now that you've been in England, now a lot of people who are listening here, they're probably wondering if you have an accent that's been like, I don't know, refined in England. But this, for me, this is how my father always spoke. Like, someone said you sound like Morgan Freeman. The accent that you have, you've always had this accent. So I just wanna kind of maybe understand this. How did you end up with this? Like, it's a colored accent, but it's also like, it's a Durban accent, but it's also something else.
I'm going to turn up this thing. Let me say this. Um, I, 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 I have generally, look, I'm not a very well educated man. I'm not. The education that I have now, something that I took it upon myself to do. I went to high
Did you
school,
finish
yeah,
school?
but I did standard 8. And that was it.
Standard 8, okay.
No, I did standard 8 and I couldn't go on because circumstance, right? The education I have now and the worldview that I have now is something that I took it upon myself to study and learn and then educate myself to create a worldview in my own mind so that I don't walk around like a blind man. I now have a worldview, even of where South Africa is and where South Africa is going, where this country where I live, where it is right now, and where it's going, where America is with Donald Trump. Now, these things don't just pop into you. You have to get a lot of books. I have a lot of books.
Yeah, growing up, you read a lot. There was always books in the house, loads of books in the house. You had friends. Uncle Spike Abdurrahman comes into mind, particularly, who would come and say to me, and he probably is one of your friends that would push you and push me to read, Carvin, read. What are you reading? And I always used to feel embarrassed if I didn't have something to tell him I've just read or I'm reading at the moment. I think that circle of reading friends also helps.
Look. The libraries are full of books, and books don't bite. Why some people are afraid of books, I don't have a clue. Books don't bite. All you have to do, go to the library and start reading. If you don't read, if you don't, look, you're a journalist today, not because I remember you coming back to me and saying, Dad, thank you for pushing me to read. I remember that very, very clearly because reading opens up doors and avenues or a world that you will never, ever go to. But a book opens up that world to you. Now, surprisingly, I read books about space and Mars and I can talk to you for hours on what goes on in Mars. Not because I studied at university or I went to some privileged school. No, I've taken time off to listen to people that who have the information that I can glean from, and the books that I go into and I read and study the books and try to understand what's going on. Religious books also, I go into them, what Hinduism is, what Christianity is, what Islam is. I read all these things because I want to have a religious view also of what's going on religiously around the world. Otherwise, I'm just a dumb fool walking around, going nowhere. That's what it is, and I don't want to be that. No.
Okay, cool. That we're gonna leave it there. For those of you, it's been. Can you believe it's been an hour already? It's been 4 minutes shy of an hour. It's been an hour. For those of you who did listen, thank you for listening and sticking around with us. I think we might do this again in a week's time. We'll kind of discuss it behind the scenes and Yeah, thanks for sharing the wisdom with us. And yeah, for those of you who enjoyed it, if you enjoyed it, please say so. And I'll get these messages that you're leaving to my dad. I'll leave them there. Thanks. Take care, guys.
Thank you, Colin.
Bye.
Thank you. Right. Bye now. Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.